All right, good morning, everybody. Good morning. Sorry to make you wait, but we were told to wait. So, I hope that you guys have talked to some people we haven't seen in a while and just mingle and network with each other. That is the beauty of these sessions, right? Is we get to collaborate and take away whatever it is that we learn. So, I'm Zoe Reading. I'm the subgroup support team lead for the Office of Leadership Effectiveness. How many of you have been to our sessions already? We've done 13 sessions. Yay, thank you. It was so nice to have all of you there. Some of you missed and wanted to come to others, but we're working up round 2 right now. So we hope to see you then. Our team, I'll let them go ahead and introduce themselves real fast, and then we're going to do a roll call, so get ready. Good morning, I'm Adrienne Lacey. Good morning, Marcella Jolie. Oh, and she can't talk. All right, so we're going to start over there in the corner with the lady standing up. And you don't have to everyone introduce themselves. You guys know how roll call works, right? Who knows how it works? Somebody knows. You just shout out where you're from. All right, so we'll start over here. You guys go ahead. Try not to miss anybody. Lexington 2. Lexington 2, all right. 4. You don't have to do it individual. If you're sitting with a group of people, just shout it. Greenville, there you go, Anna. Okay. Oh, that's all. State Department. We have State Department. All right. Okay. Sumter. All right, we need to talk to you guys before you leave. It's good. It's really good. It's really good. In fact, he had to be mad. We're trying to secure a couple of sites for this room Tuesday, so we wanted to talk to Sumter about that, and Deidre's gonna make sure she tries to put her set for you. All right, in the back right here. Dorchester 2. Okay. Berkeley County. Cherokee County. Thank you. Marion County. Dillon 3. Take 4. Anderson 4. Jasper. Anderson 5. Regional 1. How many Richmond people we got? We always have a lot of those. I see some of you holding back. Some of you know what a roll call is supposed to be. It's kind of reserved right now. We had fans busting out at the last one. You guys remember that? So at the women's conference? They're like, no, we weren't there. All right, so what we hope is that today you walk out of here understanding how what we found as it relates to subgroup successes will implicate your work and whatever your role is. Because yes, we can tell you all of these things that we know have been successful in many different places, but how do you fit into that? Because you have, how many of you federal programs? Okay. How many of you are principals? Something else. I'm sure it's a lot. How many of you hold more than one of those hats? Jasper. Yeah, so those, you guys have a lot, right? You have a lot of things that you can influence also. You might not be able to control a lot of the things
you are faced with as it relates to a school and choices that they make, but you can influence a lot. So that's what we're hoping that you walk away with. I don't want to bore you, but some of you have not attended our most recent subgroup sessions, and because of that, you've missed some things. Those of you who have just recently attended one, some of this might be just a teensy bit boring, and I told last week, just check your email for a minute, and then we'll fly through, and then you can catch back up with us. But we're going to talk just briefly about the changes, because some of you probably thought, well, I thought that's what got us off that list, and I thought that's what got us off that list. Probably both of you were right, or you were right about both things, but they've changed so many times, it's just hard to keep up, right? So these are the major changes that have happened. So we implemented the ESSA plan, the consolidated plan in 2018, identifying the first cycle schools. In 2020-21, that's when all of the waivers were put out because of COVID. Things went crazy. 2022, we identified the second cycle schools. So how many of you here are representing a school that you know of in your district as a second cycle ATSI school? Right. And we've shown you the maps, you've seen the maps with all the dots, you've probably seen them some time throughout the sessions, because that is, it does show you the evidence behind what we're doing. In 2023, that's where it really got confusing, because we took the plan that you were just starting to figure out, and we changed it, right, to something else. We stepped away from that good or excellent student progress indicator and replaced it with something else, just a little bit longer. So if you start to get confused about some of these things, what I would suggest is that you go to Kim and Yvonne's session tomorrow, because they're going to break down some things. So if you find yourself being very confused around what does it mean about these subgroup numbers, or what the changes were that were made, I highly recommend going to their session, because they're the ones that can really answer those in the weeds questions that we try to avoid. Because we were asked to focus on what are the things happening that's moving the needle for kids. So, and I know some of you are really glad to be here today, because in our first subgroup sessions, we weren't really talking about that, because we were still trying to figure out what are the things that are working, right? So I remember I see Miss Kelly back there shaking her head yes, because she was in one of our first sessions, and that's what they wanted to know, was just what are the schools that are exiting the list, what are they doing, right? So that's what we've been trying to find out. And today we're going to tell you some of those things. You probably won't be shocked by most of the things that we tell you. But again, we're looking for you to see where do you fit into that role of what works, right? In 24, we actually exited some schools. Some schools were eligible for that mid-cycle exit. So again, just to be clear, you have to go through an entire cycle of ATSI, which is how many years? 3. So if you were just identified in 22, can't exit until potentially the fall of 25. And that's when new identifications will be made. Did I say that right? Thank you. All right. So this is just to clarify your understanding of where you go next. Like when you've been identified a first cycle school, start at the top, 2017-18. That's when most of your schools were identified. And then either they could have exited or not exited in 21-22. And that's when they became a second cycle school. But then we slapped on some labels. They made it really confusing. And we called it re-identified or not exited. Re-identified meant that you were still there. Bottom 5%, right? And that was worse than being not exited, because not exited meant you were no longer in that bottom 5%. But you just didn't meet that good and excellent student progress indicator. That's when we formed that team with the State Department, where we went out and tried to support those schools specifically, because we wanted them to feel that success of having come out of the bottom 5%, but keep them going, right? So they could potentially exit. So now what we're faced with is this team, are those ESSA changes that were made and implemented in 24. So some schools were able to experience that mid-cycle exit. How many of you have had a school in your district that exited this year? That's awesome, right? That's awesome. So excited about that. And we've spoken to most of you about what things are that you've done. So the difference here is the years. So if you look at the not exited side on the blue, They weren't identified again. They were designated in 22. They weren't identified again in 22 because they were below 5%. So that's why we're going back to 17, 18. And that's the confusing part. And I'm sorry to say, going, if you have lots of questions, see me afterwards or go to their session. So how was the threshold score determined? I actually got an email about this morning from a whole school team that he used the word debate. Their whole school is debating right now where that number comes from. And again, that's their session tomorrow. But we're trying to step away also from that word target because we don't want that to be where you actually land. We want that to be the threshold that you're trying to get past and keep moving. So we're going to call it threshold score, and that's going to be new for me, so I'm just learning that vocabulary. So how do we do that? All of our schools are lined up from 0 to 100 by their WPI, their weighted point index, and that's the number overall. So that's that score report card number that you get from the bottom to the top. And then all Title I schools. And then we identify a bottom 5%, both CSI and ATSI. And how is that done for ATSI? Well, that's 20, or the subgroup gets a report card, and if they're in the bottom 5%, they are also identified. And then we identify the highest performing CSI school, and that becomes the threshold score. And that's only set during a designation year. So 22, 17, 18, and then there will be a new one in 25, right? So that is the score. That is your threshold that you should be trying to move past. We know that score changes literally every year because every year there's a bottom 5%. You may or may not be in it. But every year there's a new bottom 5%. Yes. Yes.
Yes, every year there's a bottom 5%, but the threshold is set for the 3-year cycle.
Locked in on the designation year.
Until a new.
So currently it's still locked on 22.
And one other thing, just for clarity, the ATSI schools can be Title I or non-Title I. Just in case somebody said, well, ATSI schools non-Title I. Yeah, because that score is set for CSI schools and then applied to subgroups.
Thank you for that clarity. Okay. So these are the thresholds. Again, they were locked in 21, 22. Why? Because that was a designation year. That designation year, that's when we set that threshold. So next year, those thresholds will be different. And if you look at the bottom 5% right now, most of you have seen that the elementary and middle numbers have gone up for the year 24, but for the year, or for 24 in high school, it's actually gone down. So again, those numbers do move, and we know that. We're not giving you a moving target have to be. That's just the way that it happens every year. Your locked-in scores from your designation year. All right, here's where this is all the, if you don't really understand where that actual number comes from, Ms. Mack and Ms. Cramer will talk about that tomorrow very clearly, but it's really whatever indicator you have 20 students in a subgroup, they get those points just like they would if it was the whole school. And you pull that report card out for them, that's what you're looking at, their overall number, as if they got their own report card. Do you have any questions on it? Okay, I'm skipping that one entirely. We're not going through that. Okay, so this is just a practice. So those of you who just recently been in our presentations, you'll know that we gave you some interactive time where you kind of use the number, a subgroup number overall. See if you could explain it to someone by using the number. So we're going to look at some data, and you're going to give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down based on whether you think they will exit. First, you have to look at, are they re-identified or not exited? So the first 3 schools are all re-identified, which means when were they originally designated? Well, they were re-identified, so they were most recently designated. 22, right. They originally identified 17, 18, right. So I'm confusing myself there. All right, so we are looking at 22 data to see if it meets the 24 data, and that's what that mid-cycle exit was all about, right? So, first of all, did they beat that threshold? Look at the first one. 6.67 is the actual subgroup number overall. The threshold score for elementary was set in 21-22 is 30.79. Did they go past that threshold? No. So we automatically know they're not exiting, right? But you can still look at the data. In English, meets and exceeds 4.3. Did that improve in 24? Yes, and we can celebrate that. But it doesn't mean they exit. Look at the next one. Same thing, we re-identified. So you're looking at 22 days compared to 24. It's the improvement, but first, did they beat that subgroup number overall? Did it go above the threshold? Yes. 50.47, that's amazing. This is actual school data too. Now, we look at 22. Did they beat the 22 scores? Look at English first, 11.3. Did they beat it? Oh, sorry, 6.5. Okay. All right, 6.5. Yes. Do we have to look at math to see if they exit? No, because it's either or. That's right. But let's look at both just to see. 15.8, did it improve? Yes. So they did it. There's a lot to celebrate at that school, right? So go into the next one. I'm going to let you do this with a neighbor. 15.4, 15.9, and it's a high school. So think through that. Talk about it with your neighbor, and then we're going to ask you to give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down. That should be threshold. You can change that right. Okay. Thumbs up or thumbs down? You can hold it down here if you're not sure. All right. Take your break. Anybody want to explain out loud? Okay. So they beat the 15.4 threshold with barely the 15.9. Are we going to celebrate that? Yes, we are. 11.3 to 24.6. What did they do, right? Yes, they improved that. And 6.9 in math. I know Mr. Ferguson wants to know what they did in math, right? From 6.9 to 19.7. All right, this next group is the not exited group, which meant when were they originally identified not exited? 2018, right? So that's their most recent designation. Or not designation, their most recent identification. That's why this is very confusing, those two words. But we're looking at 17, 18 days. You've got to go all the way back. As an elementary school, their threshold score would be 30.79. Did they meet it? No. No, so we automatically know they're not coming off the list. But what can we celebrate? Double the number in English and math. Okay, yeah. Eyes are getting old. Okay, last one, do it by yourself. Not with a neighbor. See if you can do it by yourself. This is a middle school because we have the threshold score is 27.48. Okay, thumbs up or thumbs in? Thumbs up or thumbs in? Okay. Yes, they would be able to mid-cycle exit in 24 days because they beat their 18 score of 9.5 in English. They did not in math, but they also beat that threshold score. Okay, you guys feel a little more confident around using that subject number overall. For a lot of people, it's just getting their hands on that subject number overall because they shouldn't have access to that data. So we know that was an issue, but now that you have it, you should be able to explain it. And again, finding your role in that. What is your role in this? Just think about that. All right. Coding for students with disabilities. We get the question all the time, do my alt students count? Students who take the alternative assessment, do they count? And what I was advised to say by Mr. Cochran and Orta was, if they ask that question, ask them what are the instructional settings for that student. If it is SR, SRE, or SP, then yes, they can. And to not argue, just to let you know, that is the instructional setting is what determines whether or not they're in your subgroup for students with disabilities. Okay? And for MLs, we have some ML people in the room, right? Mr. Zach Taylor and Miss, I'm sorry, I don't remember your name. Miss Ingrid. Would you all like to say anything about this or anything that might need to be said about how to identify your ML students, or if they want to call you? I'm putting you on the spot.
It's okay. We have a presentation happening right after this one.
Okay, good.
For multiple learners, so for the UNI grant and ML sub-grant. But the identification really goes with, I'll speak just a little louder, sorry.
I don't want to take over the presentation because we don't want to do this a little bit later. But it's based on your home language survey that the students are completing, or the parents are completing at the beginning of initial enrollment. So once they do, and they have a language other than English listed in one of those questions, there are 3 questions, then they are immediately moving into the second portion of the identification, which then require them to be assessed or screened for an ELE proficiency.
All the people that work in the state department that attend our sessions, they already know. We just have this call randomly, so thank you for engaging. All right. Good morning.
All right, so I'm here to talk a little bit about the ESSA tiers. Now that we understand our role in being able to articulate all of the levels and have these designations and how we got there, it's important for us to also understand that we play a part in the effectiveness of our educational investments. That's a huge part of our role, being the money people. So we really need to understand the ESSA tiers, and the biggest, we want our schools to have strong or moderate when it comes to the materials, the practices that they're using. And the biggest difference between those two are the types of studies that are done and whether they have reservation or they don't have reservation. So there's 5 components when looking at the ESSA tiers, and I think the one that usually gets missed is, does it match? So you can go through and it says tier 1, strong, but if it doesn't match your school, if it's, that study could have been coming out of this worked on urban children and you're a rural school, or that worked with a small environment and you're large, that needs to match. And we really need to be using these tiers when we're helping build these plans for our schools. There are a lot of really great sites that you can use. The What Works Clearinghouse is our go-to. We always use that. It also, not only does it have materials and textbooks, it also has practices. You'll also see Ed Reports. This is not as well known, but this one only does instructional materials. And we all heard Matthew Ferguson this morning say, how will this help our students? That's the biggest question when we're writing these plans. And we can't just leave it to chance because someone went to a conference and the seed was really great and we jumped on board with whatever practice it was. We need to be using these clearinghouses to make sure we are using high quality instructional materials. So please, 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 when you're creating these plans and talking with schools, be utilizing these sites. If you're not even sure, what do we need? This is a great exercise that comes out of the MTSS framework, where you can fill in, this is what we use for tier 1, this is what we use for tier 2, this is what we use for tier 3. And someone said, well, and they definitely shouldn't be the same in all of this. Well, it can, but it needs to be more exposure, it needs to be more minutes, more time, so it can, but we need to be looking at these and making sure everything aligns. Especially when you're coming to tier 2 and tier 3. Does this align with our tier 1 instruction? Are we veering off course? So not only will this show the gaps, but also after having all of those ESSER funds, people have a lot of money and they were buying a lot of things. So do we have too many? So not only using this practice to fill in the gaps, but also, do we have too many? What are we really using and what is really effective? So I highly suggest this. If you don't have this group done, I would do it. All right, so we really want you, like I said, to review the interventions, the strategies, the materials with your schools when you're creating your CLP.
And this was just a little suggestion for those of you who are helping with the writing of the plans, just to make sure that we're not requiring that this be done, it's not added on the CIP or anything like that, but just thinking through who's on the team, first of all. Ask that question as the federal conference person helping to develop this plan. Who helped you come to this decision of what you all are using? Maybe write that down. What's the outcome that you're hoping to gain? What's your goal? And then, like she said, making sure you're identifying the tier 1 or tier 2 elements along with that. Right? And we really wanted to know that those resources there, a lot of you might understand those, but a lot of principals have never used these sites. They've never used this type of thing. And unless you put them through it, they haven't done it.
The Institute of Educational Science has fantastic less than 5-minute videos. They have great one-pagers that you can print out. So I would highly suggest clicking through those, because you want to be able to hand someone, like I said, a one-pager. Nobody wants to go through a big, long 45-minute, but, under 5 minutes, it gives great explanation for the ESSA tiers. It gives great explanation on how to choose materials and how to use What Works Clearinghouse.
All right, and if you don't have your computer open, if you don't have the presentation on your phone, I'd encourage you to do that for this next step, because our protocol is going to ask that you look at these next slides, 17 through 22. I think the numbers might be wrong. But you're looking at these practices. You're going to go through all of these. You're going to stop that here. So you can pick whichever one you want to look at. The report cards are actually linked in yellow. So those are the slides I'm referencing when I say explore those slides. And you're going to record, as you're looking through those things, what are the things that are standing out to you? What are the words? Write down a word or two as you continue to read through them. What are the phrases that stick out as you're reading them? So we can do one together real fast for an example. So what's a word that you see here? You guys get ready to record. And we'll do this collectively in one. This is McKissick Academy of Science, Technology, and 6 Mile Elementary. Pickens. We got Pickens in the house, right? What's the word that you see? Goal setting. Thank you, ma'am. No. My ears are bad too. I didn't hear you. Thank you, job embedded.
Student goal setting.
Student goal setting.
Grade level, focus on grade level instruction.
That's a phrase. Focus on grade level instruction. Co-teaching. Collaborative. Collaborative with who? You got that phrase sitting there. I don't know if that's right grammar, but. Intimidated,
Collaboration, that's a phrase you'll want to write that down. Gen Ed and SPED collaborating. Okay, so this is what you'll do as you continue working through the other slides that we reviewed just now. And at the end, we're going to come up with what are the themes that we see emerging, and then how does that implicate what you do in your role every day, all day. Okay? Do you have any questions about what we're doing? All right, we have 5 minutes to explore on our own or at the table, that's okay. But please be prepared to share out some words and some phrases. Starting now. If you look at PDF of our presentation, you can see it on your phone as well if you want to log in. I tried also to put some data in there so you can see, like, looking at this school, these two schools, look at how they do their kids. Okay, we're gonna move right along because we're running out of time. We started when we wanted to, but we would have been able to not. Okay. So as you were looking at those, and the ladies are ready, you're ready. They're gonna record some of the words and phrases. So just start shouting out. What is it that you're seeing?
Collaboration between general education and SPED.
Put a check on that. Yep, because we said that earlier, but every time you shout out something that's already on there, check it again.
Progress monitoring.
Progress monitoring.
Goal setting.
Goal setting. Coaching cycles. Data analysis.
Targeted instruction.
Targeted instruction.
Instructional adjustments.
Instructional adjustments.
progress monitoring,
Action plans.
action plans,
Being responsive.
being responsive,
Professional development.
professional development. What about professional development did you see? Give me some stuff. Conferences, okay. Okay. What was the purpose of those things? Pull that out. To build capacity around what? Teachers doing what?
Tier one instruction.
Tier one instruction. Working with who? SPED and all students. Yes, sir. I know I was hesitant to put the conference thing on there, and I had to ask Mrs. Cranford over there if she was okay with that, because I know, that's something we don't want to necessarily always encourage. However, we do see that when the focus is right, and when something happens because of that conference, when they bring it back, a lot can happen from that. It's really, what is the expectation set? All right, so what do we see are what are the emerging themes? You already said one was professional development, right? What's another emerging theme? Of collaboration.
Or whatever subgroup specialist in general is.
Okay. Yes.
We do a lot of PD, and we did PD before this, but this is extremely intentional based on what the data says and the identification says. I think that's what makes what we're doing now different than what we used to do.
Because in Berkeley, there was specific personnel that they used to give the PD. So it's not just general PD, it's specific to those designated schools.
So for the sake of time, we're going to go over this real fast, and we have a guest here who's going to talk in just a minute. And we have some embedded videos in there. Berkeley County, first of all, thank you guys for sharing with us, because I know I've been singing the praises of Berkeley all across the state, but you guys really should know what they're doing there, and you should pay attention. Green Velocity, they're doing a lot of really, really great things, and it's really going into accountability around tier one and that real strong collaboration. And they've been very good about sharing things as well. If you have something that's similar you want to share with us, we really highly appreciate those things that you give us, because we won't put it out for everyone. But thank you for sharing if you want, because a lot of times when we're winning, let's say we're sharing. We appreciate those who are sharing. But commonalities statewide, this is what we're seeing. UDL. So I kept trying to get you guys to say it, that a lot of the PD that has been given, that has moved the needle for all students, is around universal design for learning. The second thing is intentional PLCs, where student work is analyzed. Somebody said something about that. Instructional practices change. I think Jasper County, you said something about seeing that evidence of the change in instruction. And then the instructional leadership team is not just present, they're involved with intent. And there's evidence of that too, because they can speak to what they're seeing and what they're doing in those sessions, and not just what they're hearing. They're part of the process. That is huge in all of the schools that we've discussed. What led to them exiting. And then the scheduling of PLCs is meant to maximize that instructional time with content experts. And Berkeley County, again, they were telling us that they have some SPED teachers who lead general education PLCs. And what better than if you're analyzing student work of a student with disabilities and you're a second year teacher and you have no idea how to reach that student. That SPED teacher can explain to you how to reach that student. That's key right there for that teacher that needs it on time, just like we preach, right? So those are the commonalities statewide. And I'm going to give
our guest a minute to speak because we did ask her to be here. We want her to share her story. Her name is Dr. Williams, and she is from South Point High School in Rock Hill, South Carolina. Y'all give her a hand. You don't have to, but you have a loud laugh. Okay. Okay.
Everyone. My name is Valerie Williams, and I'm here with Kanisha Williams. This is the assistant principal at South Point High School. And we just wanted to kind of share with you some of the things that we've done over the past couple of years to help us with ATSI and coming out of that status. When I first got to South Point, this is my 4th year at South Point, but when I first got there, we were in year 1 of what does she call it? Re-identification. Some of the terms are a little different for us because I'm actually from North Carolina. I retired as an assistant superintendent for instruction in North Carolina. Thought I wanted to stay retired, stayed out for 4 months, got a little bored, saw South Point, and I was like, I was going to go back to where I felt like I made the biggest difference, and that was in the school. So that's how I wound up at South Point. So my first year at South Point, we were in year 1, and I started at South Point in September. So the year had already started, didn't have a chance to do that summer planning. So the first thing that I kind of put in place was meeting with my assistant principals, and we don't have like an instructional facilitator or anything like that, but we had 2 program specialists and seeing where they were on the instructional level. Because I can't be going into a classroom saying one thing and then they're going in saying something else. So it was how do we calibrate and make sure we're seeing through the same set of eyes. So kind of did a lot of professional development with them, did a lot of walkthroughs with the APs and the program specialists, and started just making sure that we provided little small tidbits of feedback, not going in trying to give teachers too much at one time. Just small tidbits of feedback every time we went in the classroom. That was just a chance to kind of get their teeth wet, get their teeth wet in it, and just kind of move it into what the expectation for instruction was going to be. When we put red folders up on the doors so that every time an administrator went in, we signed the door. That gave us a chance to see, well, this teacher hasn't had anyone come in. We need to make sure we're seeing all the teachers and providing feedback to everyone. And then we started with, this is something that I've done in all of the counties that I've been in, it's called the 10 non-negotiables. For those of you that have been in a high school, you can't go in with all of this, getting ready to do a lesson plan, doing this and doing that, because they're for us. You got in there, so you have to kind of slow walk high school. So these were 10 things that no matter what classroom we went in, these were the expectations of things that we were supposed to see. We mimicked those things when we did professional development for our staff, so that as we did professional development, once we finished it, okay, did you see an essential question? What was the essential question? What were the 3 high order questions? What was the vocabulary that we focused on? How did we get you active engaged? So those were some of the things that we asked them to show them that if we can do a PD in 15 or 20 minutes with the staff and hit all 10 of the non-negotiables, you can do it in a 90-minute session. So once we got the assistant principals working with the 10 non-negotiables, I had them all printed out on a poster, and we posted them everywhere around the building. Every classroom you go in, the 10 non-negotiables, every administrative office, the counselor's office, everyone was expected to do these 10 non-negotiables. And I started with a brief walkthrough form that only focused on those 10 non-negotiables and providing that feedback and that coaching that first year on those 10. Well, at the end of the first year, what do you think happened? We saw growth, but what else happened? Somebody said, say it loud and proud. What happened? Yes. We had 18 years. We did have some that got promotion, but there were some where they're in my room too much. Why are you always in my room trying to see what I'm doing? Why do we have to have these particular things posted on our boards, because an essential question, the standard, 3 higher order thinking questions, and the agenda had to be posted on everyone's board every day. And the standard, those words, if it says describe, then I need to see you doing some activities where they're described. If it says evaluate, then I need to see some activities where you need to evaluate. So those were the things that we just kind of focused on that first year, and then I'll let her talk about them.
And then in addition to focusing on what those higher order, well, my name's Kenesha Williams. It was my 3rd year, I think it was, when Dr. Williams came on board. And so I had the luxury of having that brief historical knowledge of where we were, and buying in to where we were headed. So we did a lot of work with coming to a common language. We talked about what were some of the things that we had already been doing, how do we see those similarities in the 10 non-negotiables, and try to use that as a way to kind of bridge the gap between the vision of where we wanted to go and where they thought that we should be, because it felt like it was rocking and rolling, even though we weren't seeing that growth. We had lots of conversations about just likely onboarding a lesson planning template. Not to say like, you don't see this, I always joke with them, you're not going to lose $10 out of your paycheck because we don't see this lesson planning template. But it was a way to, hey, if you are getting a good grasp on what we're talking about when we're saying non-negotiables, and you want to see how you can package that well for you and your students, let's use this template. This is the EATS template, and this will be a great way to go ahead and put that out there and plan your lessons where all these things can happen like you see us doing. There was some pushback. As Dr. Williams said, some folks that felt like there was another bus that had better seats for them to be on. But for those that have stayed the course, they have been able to see that growth along with it.
And we didn't focus on just a particular subgroup that first year. We focused on all students. It was good quality teaching instruction, teaching from bell to bell, every day was the expectation. So once we started doing that and they started seeing our face in the classroom, because I thought the APs was going to pass out, because I told them the expectation for me was you do 20 walkthroughs a week. And it was like 20. When you think about it, if a walkthrough is 15 minutes on the low end, 15 minutes 5 a day or 4 a day, that's a small amount of your time that you're taking out to be in the classrooms. And that's the thing that we say is most important. So if I can take an hour and a half, 2 hours out of my day for instruction and coaching, then I got the rest of the day for all the other stuff. You can find time to do what's important for you. And if you want to do discipline all day, then that's what your school is going to look like. If you want to do high quality instruction and be in and help out, I'm a math teacher by heart, and the math department is mine. And I get on the math teacher's nerves because I think I can do it better than everybody. Ideas. And so I go in and sometimes I help the math teachers teach. But over the years they've come to appreciate that because now they see we're not in their spine on you. Kids don't know when you're coming in. They won't have cell phones out. They won't have their heads down because they now know you're in the classroom and you appreciate, and they appreciate that quality instruction. And then in year 2, we just kind of went a little further and started going deeper into the.
I just want to say we're over time, and I just want to make sure you are aware of that.
Yep. All right. So year 2, we went a little further into deeper things that we did in year 1, and I'm proud to say that we got tremendous growth out of year 1. We got growth out of year 2, and we are not an ATS school.
And I will say that she has agreed with all those commonalities that we have there just now. They agree with that. I also want to draw attention to Berkeley High School on this link. If you click on their name, Berkeley High, Heather Duggar is the principal at Berkeley High School. And she talks through all the things that they put into place as well. It is worth a listen. Please listen to that. And Stephen Elementary is also included in that. Please do, though, think about what you heard this principal talking about. Just think about how can you use what you know, those commonalities we talk about statewide, to impact what your schools are doing. You are not just a money person, right? Okay, thank y'all for coming.
Open